The football world mourned him as a flawless hero, a gentleman, a symbol of everything English football once claimed to be. Tributes spoke of greatness, humility, honor. But behind the medals, behind the applause, Bobby Charlton lived a far more complicated story, one shaped not just by glory, but by survival, guilt, and a lifelong struggle with joy itself. Long before the stadiums and silverware, Bobby Charlton was a boy from Ashington, a hard coal town in Northumberland, where life offered little comfort and even less mercy. This was a place that forged toughness early. Coal dust filled the air, money was scarce even in a coal-rich region, and families survived through shared hardship. Children played football not for fun, but for escape. The streets were cold, the ground unforgiving, and the expectations relentless. Charlton was born into a family where football was already a burden as much as a blessing. His cousin Jackie Milburn was a Newcastle United legend, a towering local hero whose shadow loomed over every kick Bobby took. His father, known as Boxer, was a miner with a reputation for bare-knuckle fighting, a man who embodied resilience and endurance. From an early age, Bobby learned that strength didn't need to shout. It simply endured. Football was everywhere. It was spoken about at home, played in the streets, and revered in local pubs. Bobby and his brother Jack spent countless hours chasing a ball through freezing alleys, idolizing Stanley Matthews and dreaming quietly of something greater. Unlike Jack, who was loud and fearless, Bobby was reserved. He watched more than he spoke. Even then, there was something inward about him, as if he carried thoughts he never intended to share. When the time came to choose a club, Bobby made a decision that quietly fractured his hometown. Newcastle United seemed inevitable, almost an obligation, but Bobby chose Manchester United. For many in Ashington it felt like betrayal, yet for Bobby, it was something else entirely. Matt Busby offered a vision that went beyond geography. He offered belief, style, and purpose. Under Busby, football wasn't just about winning. It was about how you played, who you became, and what you stood for. At Old Trafford, Charlton entered a world that moved faster than anything he'd known. The Busby babes were young, fearless, and brilliant. Among them stood Duncan Edwards, a player so physically dominant and naturally gifted that he seemed destined to rule football. Bobby admired Edwards deeply, but also measured himself against him constantly. Edwards was everything Bobby felt. He was not stronger, louder, more commanding. He pushed Charlton to work harder, to refine his game, to chase perfection through discipline rather than dominance. Then came Munich. On February 6, 1958, everything stopped. The plane crash didn't just kill teammates, it killed innocence. Bobby Charlton survived physically, but something essential was lost forever. At just 20 years old, he watched friends die, dreams disappear, and a future collapse into ash. Duncan Edwards lingered for days before passing away, a slow heartbreak that left scars deeper than words could reach. Charlton rarely spoke publicly about the guilt of survival, but those closest to him knew it changed him completely. His children would later say that Munich altered his mindset forever. Joy became complicated. Celebration felt inappropriate. Happiness felt like something he had no right to claim. Just 3 weeks after the disaster, Bobby Charlton returned to football. By today's standards, it would be unthinkable. There was no therapy, no space to grieve. Football demanded continuity. Charlton complied, but the man who returned to the pitch was not the same boy who had left for Belgrade weeks earlier. When he scored goals after Munich, he barely reacted. One moment, scoring against Scotland at Hampden Park, revealed everything. The crowd roared, but Charlton barely smiled. Later, he admitted that celebrating felt wrong. How could he express joy when so many who should have shared it were gone? Yet football refused to let him fade. Charlton's game evolved. He became stronger, more disciplined, more devastating. His long-range shots were thunderous, but never reckless. His movement was elegant, his stamina relentless. He played with a quiet authority that commanded respect without demanding attention. At Manchester United, he became the foundation of the club's rebirth. Season after season, he carried responsibility without complaint. He scored goals, won titles, and led by example. 3 league championships, an FA Cup, and finally the European Cup crowned his club career. His numbers were extraordinary, but it was his consistency that defined him. Internationally, Bobby Charlton became England's heartbeat. He earned 106 caps, scored 49 goals, and embodied a nation's hopes. In 1966, at the World Cup on home soil, everything aligned. Charlton delivered one of the greatest tournament performances in English football history. He neutralised Eusebio, dominated midfield battles, and propelled England toward immortality. When England lifted the trophy at Wembley, the country erupted, streets filled with celebration. History was made. Bobby Charlton had reached the summit of the sport, and yet he went home quietly. While others basked in the moment, Charlton retreated into himself. His brother Jack danced with joy, embracing the glory fully. Bobby absorbed it in silence. Victory didn't erase Munich. It didn't absolve survival. It simply added another chapter to a life lived under restraint. As football entered a new era, Charlton increasingly felt out of place. The game became louder, richer, more indulgent. Players chased fame, controversy, and excess. Charlton didn't understand it, and didn't try to hide his discomfort. This led to tension, most notably with George Best. Best was brilliant, rebellious, and self-destructive. Charlton admired his talent but feared his path. Their relationship fractured, not from hatred, but from incompatible worldviews. To some, Charlton appeared cold, judgmental, old-fashioned, but the truth was far more human. He had seen how football could consume and destroy. He had buried friends because of it. He believed discipline was not restrictive, it was protective. Off the pitch, Charlton's life was marked by loyalty rather than spectacle. His marriage to Norma lasted nearly 7 decades, an extraordinary constant in a volatile profession. She was his anchor, his private refuge from public life. Yet even here, Charlton was not immune to pain. Family tensions, estrangements, and unspoken conflicts existed, handled quietly and away from headlines. Charlton never sought sympathy. He believed dignity meant carrying pain privately. Even grief, in his mind, was something to be honored with celebration rather than silence. When his childhood hero, Jackie Milburn, died, Charlton wanted applause, not mourning. Life, like football, deserved to be remembered with joy. In his later years, reconciliation came slowly. Rifts softened. Time allowed perspective. Charlton reflected more openly on his life, acknowledging the weight he had carried. He remained humble, often uncomfortable with praise, still questioning whether he had truly earned happiness. When Bobby Charlton passed away at 86, football paused. Tributes flowed from every corner of the world. Legends spoke of respect. Fans spoke of inspiration. Manchester United called him their soul. Pell once described him as the spirit of football. And perhaps that was the truest description of all. Not because he was perfect, but because he represented the game's full humanity's beauty, its cruelty, its capacity to elevate and to wound. Bobby Charlton did not just play football, he survived it. He protected it. He carried its heaviest memories without allowing bitterness to define him. His greatness was not only in goals and trophies, but in restraint, resilience, and quiet honor. In the end, his legacy was not built on noise or ego, but on endurance, a man who lived with ghosts, yet never let them steal his dignity. A footballer who proved that true strength does not always celebrate loudly, but it lasts forever.